All right, welcome to Kevin's show work. We're 11. Okay, just to remind you guys, the reason why I make these videos is so that you can see how to show work on these questions. Showing work reduces your chance of making silly errors or getting tricked. That's the entire reason. All right, number one. Here you see pollutants, a dash, and another sentence, right? So first, let's just look for the subject and verb. And if we look here, located about 60 kilometers northwest of Toronto, this starts with a participle phrase. So you know that this is a modifier. What is it modifying? The subject, aquifer, right? And what's the aquifer? What is it doing? It has been repeatedly exposed to a variety of pollutants. Okay, let's look after the dash. Since 1978, researchers have been running controlled experiments. So already you see two subjects and verbs, and you know that to connect them, you either need a semicolon, colon, a period, once in a while a dash. Okay, so let's look through all of these real quick. We'll start off with D. It has a period, right? Which is perfectly fine, except it has a colon right after the year. There is no reason for a colon unless it's connecting two ideas together or it's the beginning of a list. There's none of those, so we can cross that out. Here it is a colon, which is perfectly fine, but it has a dash. A dash usually introduces either a modifier or another subject verb that it's going to connect to with whatever was in front. But here, because there's a colon, there is no need for a dash. Okay, you cannot have a comma combining two subjects and verbs, right? So here, the only choice left is A. And with a with a dash, right? This is very similar to a colon, meaning it can be used to clarify previous sentence. And so it can be also used for two subjects and verbs. All right, number two. Here what's underlined is excavated. This is a verb. So first thing we're gonna do is look for the subject. Subject is chemicals. Chemicals is plural. Is singular, right? So we're looking for a plural form of that verb. Are is the only one. Let's go to number three. Which choice provides the best transition from the previous paragraph to this one? So here, best transition from previous paragraph. As I said in previous videos, don't be lazy, right? Turn the page. So if we go to the previous page, it talks about how, but some pollutants are allowed free movement if the researchers determine that the concentration will drop back into an environmentally acceptable range. So pollutants are allowed free movement. Okay? This process may seem objectionable, right? But the experiments provide valuable insights into the behavior of some of the most dangerous and prevalent groundwater pollutants. So we need something that actually talks about what happened in the previous page, which is about how pollutants are allowed free movement. A actually talks about it by saying this process, right, of pollutants allowed free movement, right? None of the other ones actually talk about the previous, okay? The other clue is that it's talking about pollutants, so it has to talk about these guys, right? That's the best transition. So first transition is it has to talk about the part, and A is the only one that actually does. 4. Which choice most effectively combines the underlined sentence? So if there's two sentences here, right? So first thing we're going to see that it's going to have to be combined at this point, at this period. One strategy is to look through all the answer choices and circle where it is combined or how it's combined. So here it's using a semicolon. Here it's using a comma and. Here it's using a participle phrase. And here it's using a dash. Okay? If you look at all of these sentences, if you actually read carefully, they all kind of make sense, right? But the SAT likes the participle phrase. Okay? They like it. Why? Because it's shorter. So here the answer is C. The rest are too long. And if you even count the line numbers, all of them are 5 lines, while this one is only 4. These are all 5. Let's go to number 5. Okay, in number 5, it is a transition, right? For instance. So the first thing that we're going to do is look for the key words or phrases that this transition is talking about. And if you look at the first sentence, right, versus the next one, you see it says cannot replicate the variation in geological features, right? And here it says cannot accurately model the behavior, right, of these contaminants. If you look at these two sentences and these two keywords, you'll notice that this is a result of that. Because they can't replicate the variation, they cannot accurately model. So here the only one that says that is as a result, cause and effect. One thing I recommend that you guys do is actually label all of these, right? For instance, as an example, although as a contrast, next is sequence. Okay, this will help you try to think of the relationship between these two. Number 6, which choice provides the most effective response to the possible relevant counterclaim of the argument in support of the controlled studies in the Borden experimental site? From here, it talks about how the data gathered at the Borden experimental site allow research to make improvements and better predict the movement and yada, 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 right? So one thing we know from the question and the thing is that it has to talk about experiments, right? B does not talk about experiments, right? No experiment, okay? C, it looks like it's talking about experiment, but it says it's useful, but it's saying that it's actually not that useful, right? That's the counter. A, some people are still skeptical of value of these experiments. This is too general, which leaves us with D. Here it's talking about the risks of, right? Field studies carry greater risk than laboratory studies. So it's talking about both experiments, and it's talking about the risks involved, right? And it's actually a response to a counterclaim. Number 7. Okay, so here we have a comma, right? Anytime you see an underline and two, 3 words and a comma in between, always look for the subject and verb. So here, researchers is the subject, conducted is the verb. After the comma, they is the subject, selected is the verb. We know that a comma cannot, right, combine 2 subjects and verbs, so we can cross that out. So A is out. What about B? If you have when, that is a subordinating conjunction, so you cannot, this makes it a dependent clause. So we cannot have a complete sentence with when. Okay. C is using a comma and then changes the verb into a participle phrase, right? And just like one of the previous questions, the SAT really likes the participle phrase, and it actually makes sense. And participle phrases make sense when the subject, they, right, and researchers are the same. When they're the same, you can use a participle phrase. So here, C is the most correct answer. Let's go to number 8. In number 8, you see plus then. Plus then is kind of a weird way of saying anything. It's redundant because you're saying like, and then something is happening, right? So all you really need here is and. Plus also is also redundant, while also is also redundant, right? So remember, not to choose the redundant answers. So D here is the correct answer. Number 9. So the last line, right? The results show that the dispersal of the ions was less uniform and predictable than had previously been assumed. Okay, you know that this is 1 and 2 of 2 lists, right? Of a list that what the results showed. So in a list, you don't need a comma, right? It's unnecessary. And also you don't need this comma either before comparing something. So if you ever see a than, there should never be a comma in front of that. Okay, the only one that has that is actually B, right? All the other ones have all these extra commas. All right, let's go to the last 2 questions, okay? Number 10, the unexpected results were, right, respected for a breakthrough, right? That could kind of make sense, yeah, right? They're like respected. But here, these results, right, what were they? They were a breakthrough. If they were a breakthrough, you would say they were praised as, right, or acclaimed, right? If something was a breakthrough, you'd want everyone to know about it. Here, D. D, this is what it means. Hailed as means praised as or acclaimed as. Recognized as being is not bad, but again, remember, being is about 99% wrong. At this point, the author wants to add an example of one of the technologies tested at the Borden site. So one thing you know from here is that we need an example of the technology, right? If we look through all the answer choices, we know that the Waterloo barrier, right, is an innovation, right? This is related to technology. So A is actually correct. All the other ones, all the other subjects do not include, right? Do not include a new technology or any technology. We don't even need new. There's no technology. All right. I hope this video helped. Okay. Hopefully you guys don't make any silly errors.